Okay, so I did my paper and presentation on the book of Titus, which is towards the end of the New Testament. This letter was written by St. Paul to Titus after Titus was sent to Crete to establish the church there and to appoint elders. Titus was a Greek intellectual who was born in Crete. While some sources do say he was born in Antioch, I do believe that he was more likely born in Crete. So he was well versed in Greek pantheism and paganism, seeing as how the Cretans believed that the Greek gods were born on the island, especially Zeus. So Titus would have been converted by Paul more than likely on the first missionary journey when he went to Crete, and then over the subsequent journeys, Titus and Paul became great friends and disciples, and Titus became one of Paul's most closest disciples. And that we see in 2 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 6, where it says, "But God who comforts the downcast comfort us by the comforting of Titus." So that is that. So getting into the book of Titus, the book of Titus, chapter 2. Titus is speaking here, or Paul is speaking through Titus here to the members of the Cretan church. He is telling them he is speaking to the elders, telling them to teach and to live by the code of Christianity and of God. He's also speaking to the young congregants of the church and telling them that they need to live in the way of God and to be sober-minded and temperate. And then towards the end of the first half of the book, the chapter, he speaks to bondservants, which in this context means slaves. However, in other places in the Bible, it could refer to a bondservant of Jesus or a bondservant of God, meaning to be fully obedient to God as to glorify Him. So we go on from a doctrinal kind of speak to the second half of the book, or the second half of the chapter, which talks more about the practical application of said doctrine. Verse 12 here, it reads, "It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age." And this is directly mirrored with John chapter 17, verse 14, which says, "I have given them your word, and the world has hated them, for they are not of the world any more than I am of the world." And so that means that we should not allow ourselves to give in to these worldly desires and these worldly lusts. Now, I do think that that is a heavy topic, but at the same time, you have to take into account that Crete was such a sinful place. Crete was almost like Las Vegas, right? We know Las Vegas is Sin City. Well, Crete and Corinth were both the equivalents at the time. So then he goes on in verse 13 and 14 to speak about giving all the glory to Jesus, and how Jesus came to give himself for us, that way we could live more godly lives. So he says here, while we wait for the blessed hope, the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ, who gave himself for us to redeem us from all wickedness and to purify for himself a people that are his very own, eager to do what is good. And this is reflected in James, the book of James 2, verse 17, which reads, "In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead." So, and this, I believe, does not necessarily tell us to, that we have to we have to do good works to be saved. However, once we are saved, good works will come. So I think ultimately with this book, I think the message here is that while this is a timely word, this is also a timeless message. And what I mean by that is that in the